Hey friends, your pal Mike Shea from Sly Flourish, here with another episode of Sly Flourish's Lazy DM Prep. Today, we are going to be doing preparation for a campaign in Blades in the Dark. Blades in the Dark is an independent role-playing game built around heists and capers in a dark fantasy city called Duskvol. My players just finished our Rime of the Frost Maiden D&D campaign, and as a group, we decided we wanted to try some other RPGs, and this one has been high on my list for a while. I've heard a lot about it. I've heard lots of good things about it. Lots of people have ideas from Blades in the Dark that they've been bringing into their D&D games, and I wanted to actually try it out. Today, we are going to prepare for my first, probably it's a session 0, maybe it's a session 0.5 of Blades in the Dark. Blades in the Dark, so it is a pretty thick book. It's like a 300-page book. And it just says, when it describes the book, it says, you're going to want to read this book through before you run it. And I was like, are you serious? Like, I don't have that kind of time. But I did read a lot of it. I poured over it. Over the past couple of weeks, I've been kind of pouring over this book to get ready to run it. And do I feel like I'm ready? No, I don't. I don't feel like I'm ready at all. Am I diving in anyway? Yeah, we're gonna go give it a shot. And so in the prep session today, it's going to be different than normal days. We're going to be talking mostly about how I'm going to bring this game to the players and get us started with things. So Blades in the Dark has a pretty good, if I recall, section. I have to find it here, where they tell you how to play the game. First, like how to first get started. I've got to find it in here. Where is it? Starting the game. Right. So this section of the book, I think, is a good way to go. Right. First session of the game, group chooses a crew type. So what I'm going to do is we're going to jump to my Notion notebook here. So in my Notion notebook, I created a new campaign. I created it using the Notion campaign builder, but I feel, I'm pretty sure that I am going to be changing a lot of this campaign design around how Blades operates, because it's a very different kind of game than D&D is. I've heard a lot of the things from Return of the Lazy Dungeon Master can work, and that sounds great, and I like to try that, but I'm also recognize it is a very different kind of game, so we're going to see. But I do know that I'm going to still be running the equivalent of a session 0, and I want to create it. So I'm not going to be doing like the elevator pitch and the 6 truths. I don't think. We're gonna set those aside for now. And in the session 0, the first thing I want to do is like I'm gonna create a checklist, right? And I'm gonna take this stuff from here and choose a crew, create scoundrels, and then embark on the first score, right? So choose a crew, choose a scoundrel, embark on a, what do they call it? Not a heist or a caper. They call it a score, right? Okay, so that sounds pretty straightforward. To prepare, read through the character and crew creation again. You'll take the lead on the process, walking everyone through the steps and answering their questions as you go. The creation phase is very important. It impacts all the future sessions you're about to play. So take your time and create a cast of characters that everyone is curious about, right? So let's skim through the factions of Duskvol. Yes, pick 3 or 4 that are especially interested in. There's also a pre-built one in here, and I might go with the pre-built one. We'll find out. Skim through the factions, pick 3 or 4 that interest you. During crew creation, the players will ask you about some factions connected to their crew, so it's good to have a few in mind already. If you're using the War on Crow's Foot starting situation on page 204, you'll probably want to use the Crows, the Lampbacks, and the Red Sashes as your connected factions to start. Probably that's smart. Right. And one thing that's both kind of interesting and fun about this is I feel like I'm going to be playing D&D when I didn't know anything about D&D, right? I haven't really I've watched a couple of videos about Blades, but I didn't watch any people playing Blades. And I haven't run it myself or played in it myself, which is kind of fun and scary. It's sort of like you picked up the starter set for D&D and you're on your own and you're figuring out how to play it. And I think that is pushing me out of my comfort zone. Definitely. I am worried that I'm going to have some like D&D tracks in my head that are going to be hard to pop out of, like do a perception check. Oh, what is that? Right. But we're going to follow we're going to follow that. So, we're going to start with like choosing a crew. So let's look at the crew section, because essentially you not only have a character for yourself, you have a character for your group, right? The crew, right? Characters are scoundrels. Cutters, hounds, leeches, lurks, slides, spiders, and whispers are the types of characters. The crew, in addition to counter, you also create the crew by choosing which type of criminal enterprise you're interested in exploring. The crew gets its own character sheet, just like the characters. Assassins, occult, bravos, hawkers, smugglers, or shadows, right? So we're going to start off by picking one of these groups, right? Assassins, cult, bravos. So let's see, choose a crew. I want them to play cults. Shocker. Hawkers, smugglers, and shadows. It seems to me like some of these are more interesting than the others. Like Assassins sounds interesting. Bravos, not so bad. Cult. Hawkers and smugglers doesn't sound particularly interesting to me. Shadows sounds interesting. So I'm curious what they will choose. And then they pick their characters, right? And, cutters are intimidating fighters. Hounds are deadly sharpshooters and trackers. Leechers are tinkers, alchemists, and saboteurs. Lurks are stealthy infiltrators. Slides are manipulators and spies. Spiders are devious masterminds, and whispers are arcane adepts. So that's pretty cool, right? Those are all fun groups, and players can pick. If nobody, you don't need just one of these. You can have multiple. So that all looks cool. Then I think one thing that we probably need to do is, a brief description of Duskvol and the world of Blades, right? And there's some text, I think it's right in the beginning. When I was doing a preview of this, I like it. The game takes place in this setting section is awesome, right? And we're going to, what we're going to do? We're just going to snapshot that right in here. So I created a new page, right? And I can say Duskvol. I probably should have made this. I think there's a move to. Oh, first of all, let's create we're going to rename the campaign database. I'm going to call it Shadow. Whoops. We'll call it the Blades database. And then we go in here and we go to Duskvol and we say move to Blades database. Right. And now suddenly we have tags, and we're going to do a location tag. Right. So I've got a new Blades database. I've got a new thing in Blades, so I can link to that. And now I don't need that now I've got it linked there. Cool. So we want to describe, we're going to be, this is really like, okay, session 0, we're running a brand new game. What is it going to be like? Well, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to say, thank you all for coming. I think it has like things you can say when you're running your first game, right? Where was that? Yeah, at the first setting, right? After everyone shows up and chit chats, you sit down, ready to play. I mean, I'm glad it has this section. It's funny that it's on page 201. And then it has like this, like what you can say. Well, I'm not going to, okay, so you're all daring scoundrels on the haunted streets of Duskvol, seeking your fortunes in the criminal underworld. Let's make some characters and form a crew. Here are some playbooks. There are different types of scoundrels you can play. I'll summarize them. It's funny that I thought they picked their crew first, right? Choose a crew type. I guess, did they choose the crew? Should they choose the crew first or their character first, or they do both kind of at the same time? We don't over-explain the mechanics, but I think it's probably worth the core mechanic, right? Which is basically, this is a D6 based dice pool game. You roll a number of D6s and choose the best one. A 6 is a success. A 4 or 5 is a success at a cost, and a 1 through 3 is a failure. Right. Really should choose the crew first, as it decides the tone for everyone signing off. Katia says character first, then crew. So obviously there's the disagreement about which to choose first. I think I'm going to start by talking about the crew first, because that gives everybody a little bit of what kind of character do you want to play within there. So I think I'm going to try it that way. But I think like we could go back and forth. So we'll see. Argent Jagger says, I thought this was a little like Fate. It is a little like Fate, but it's got its own system. It's neither Apocalypse World, it's not using Powered by Apocalypse, and it's not using Fate. It's using its own mechanics. So I'll describe that section, and I don't think we need to describe much more about the mechanics. The other thing is, I want to say this game relies heavily on the players to help build the world and the situation. This includes things like flashbacks, where you can roll to determine if you've done something in the past and how well you did, right? But there's a heavy, it's an abstract game. I asked last week, I was like, what about maps for locations? Like if you're going to go do a heist and you're going to go like assassinate the corrupted noble of a manor, wouldn't you want a map for the manor? And most people said no, because the game is so fluid in the way the story goes that like rooms could shift around depending on the kinds of rolls that happen. So like having anything that's too narrowed down is too inflexible for the style of game that Blades has. And I'm like, okay, we'll see how that goes, right? And that's what we're going to see. Like, I'm going to try it. We're going to see how it goes. My players, they're cool. They're all at home. Like nobody's, as long as nobody's a dick, right? And nobody will be a dick. They're all my friends. I don't think this could be too bad a time, right? But we'll see how things go. And it might turn out that like at the end we're like, this is too complex for us. Let's go back to D&D or whatever. So much of it is dependent on like, what happens during the game to determine things. So like I can't come up with a map today because I don't know what heist they're going to go on, right? But I don't know how am I supposed to come up with that heist, right? Like how do we choose the particular heist? I don't know. It's weird things like that. So that's this is the elevator pitch, right? This description of Duskvol is my elevator pitch. So I don't really need that. Is there a 6 truths that we think would help? I think there are 6 truths. So I'm interested for those of you in Twitch chat to help me fill out what are the 6 truths. The city of Duskvol sits in a wasteland, in a ghost-infested wasteland. The city is protected by huge lightning towers, fed by electroplasm, the most valuable substance in the world. Right? That's kind of a big one. Huge Leviathan hunters, fleets of Leviathan hunter ships sail or travel into the Black Sea, where the stars below are as bright as the stars above. There they harvest the blood of what? What are those things out there? Are they Leviathans? To refine into electroplasm. All right, cool. What other Duskvol is filled with corruption and gangs? The gangs, crews. Duskvol is filled with corruption and crews who battle for their own scrap of territory and riches. That's kind of important. What other, the sun, when did the cataclysm occurred, right? This is probably a bit of history that's useful when we think about Duskvol. There we go. So about 800 years ago, right? About 800 years ago, the cataclysm shattered the sun, right? Sending the world into eternal darkness. Hey, just like Frost Maiden. Sending the world into eternal darkness. People of the mining settlement, like most of all survivals, those who survived swear fealty to the immortal emperor in exchange for magical protection. So can I grab this text? We'll edit this text here. Oh, that didn't work. Guess I can't copy the text. That's a bummer. The survivors swore fealty to the immortal emperor for his magical protection against the what? Against the legions of vengeful spirits and horrors unleashed on the world. Okay. Any other? Those are 4. I'll leave some extra. So I don't have villains. I don't have character options. I don't have patrons or factions. We will have safety tools, right? So for safety tools, we are going to do 2. We have lines, and we will fill this out with my players when we do this. So what lines do I have? No violence towards children. No player initiated torture. I don't want to sit there while we discuss the grim details of pulling out fingernails. What other things as a player? Like I'm a DM. I'm one of the players. I get to choose some lines that I have. Obviously, no sexual assault or non-consensual physical sexual contact. Any other veils? Probably torture and slavery will be veiled. Any other veils? I don't know. And then we have drugs and alcohol, I think are okay. They're fine with me. You know, big question of what the other players. And the verbal X card. Let's pause for a minute. Right, these are that's my verbal X card. At any point during the game, anybody can say, let's pause for a minute, we break character. That's you know, a keyword that we all break character to discuss what's going on in game. It doesn't have to be a big thing. We can use this at any time to break character and make sure we're all okay with what's going on. I think that is fine. Campaign inspiration. So there is some good. I don't know how much homework to give people, but like Gangs of New York, I think is great. Heat is great. What else kind of grabs the world? The Uncharted? Not Uncharted. Is it Uncharted? Peaky Blinders. The Departed. Ooh, that's a good one. Dishonored. Bloodborne. Leverage. People are all about Peaky Blinders. That's probably good. So, okay, cool. I think we've got, and so I'm going to share this page with my players, right? They can see this page, and we'll talk through it. So okay, you know what I need to do? I need to pick some factions, right? Because the book told me to, right? The book said, the good book, somewhere on that page, whose page number I already forgot. I should really keep track. I'm glad this book's thin so it doesn't blow up my browser when I move it around. Yeah, for those of you, by the way, who are in chat, who have played Blades, if you have thoughts about how best, like where are the tricky bits, right? Where are the tricky bits that are particularly not in the book, or like you really want to pay attention to it? And like I'm good, like the GM principles and GM best practices and stuff. We'll review these real quick. But I think I'm pretty good with that stuff. That all fit my general DMing style already, so I'm not too worried about it, I don't think. So to review the factions, right? So 238. And of course, I took the thing away, so I don't know what page number I'm at. 242. Only did a one-shot. Heard you have to play a series because of the between job pieces. Yeah, you don't have to worry about that. I'm doing more than a one-shot, though, so I might do some of that stuff, and that's the downtime activities and stuff like that. 238. I read a lot about Duskvol, and there was a good list. These are all the neighborhoods. There's a lot of stuff here. Ooh, it did start freezing. A lot of details. I'm like, I'm not reading all this. So I picked Crow's Foot. Like I read Crow's Foot, and what I can do is boop and copy to save to clipboard, and we will Blades database. Oh, I can get rid of these guys, right? Delete. delete. I think that the Notion notebook will be really good during gameplay on this, because as we're creating NPCs and locations, I can be dropping them in and just creating new cards for them while it's going on. I think that will work. I think that will work well. Oh, what was I looking at? Oh, factions, right? One thing is, like, I feel like a lot of the description, particularly the initial scenario, lost some of the fantastic connections of the city. Like, I'm particularly interested in, like, the Leviathan hunters and the ghost, the electro towers, the lightning towers keeping the ghosts at bay. The fact that there's no sun. The fantastic elements are what grabs me more than, like, hey, let's go raid a noble's manor. So the faction, wow, look at all these factions. Oh, the Hive, the Unseen, the Circle of Flame, Lord Surlock, the Silver Nails, the Billhooks, the Crows, the Dimmer Sisters, the Grey Cloaks, the Grinders, the Lampbacks, the Red Sashes. I think I might go with the ones that they suggest, because I don't want to read 1,000 factions. Look at it. There's 2 pages of factions. The Crows, an old gang with new leadership known for running illegal games of chance and extortion rackets. Who are the Red Sashes? The Red Sashes, originally the Irvin School of Swordsmanship, expanded to criminal endeavors. Is there any other group that really grabs me? People like the Dimmer Sisters. Those are. So their recommendation is that you pick like 3 factions, and you have like 2 that are in direct competition with one another, and then a third that is trying to capitalize off of the others. But I think for ease today, what page was that on? Factions are on page 283. So we'll go to factions and we'll get that. But I think for ease, we're going to go with the factions that it recommends. I should really remember what page number the getting started is. The engagement role is an interesting thing, that essentially, like, they come up with a plan, but like parts of this just feel like I'm going to fall apart, right? Like, I'm going to try this and I'm going to be like, I don't know how to do this. So, like, they're coming up with a plan, but a plan to do what? Because, like, I haven't even thought of a place for them to do it yet. Like, I'm going to have to make it up as we go. And, like, I'm going to make up entire locations. I feel like I'm going to get lost very, very quickly, right? I feel like there are going to be, like, I'm going to be making up the details as we go. And normally I have, like, I think of a manor, I have a manor ready. I'm going to go back to the table of contents again. So that's where, like, I just don't know how this thing is going to play out, right? Like, it really scares me. So let's go to starting the game again. Prepare with the touchstones. Yeah, I'm good on that. So the starting position, page 204. Okay. Oh, that's right here. So really this chapter. Remember page 200. But let's review the GM principles here, right? Let's go into this, like, how to play. And just do a skim, a skim read. You don't need the details. I don't know how a game is anything not details, right? Like, I gotta have something for them to do. So running the game. You've run other role-playing games. You might find running this game a bit different, mainly the distribution of authority of the game and the way the players have a lot of say over what rules are applied. Okay, cool. GM goals. Find and play out what happens. Yep. Convey the fictional world honestly. Yep. Bring Duskvol to life. Sure. Achieve your goals using GM actions guided by your GM principles. Okay. GM actions. Okay. Ask questions. All right. Ask establishing questions. Sets the stage for actions. Who's leading the group? Is everyone rushing in to fight with RC, or is someone hanging back? Yeah, I do that, right. Provocative questions. What kind of person does he think you are now? Are you just like, okay. Ask leading questions. All right. Ask trivial questions when the mood strikes you if you're curious. Where do you usually go for dinner? Yeah. Okay. Ask the players for help when you're uncertain or stuck. I don't know. Should this be desperate or risky? What's a good devil's bargain here? All right. Cool. Right. And that's part of it. So this is something like, the game's principles, right? The GM and player are really all players together. Much more so than like in D&D, I think. Provide opportunities, follow the lead. Yeah, I get that. Goal of guided by goals and principles, right? They're really reinforcing the goals and principles. Between scores of pieces, gather information to set up their next operation. If the players don't have their own idea for the job, this is a perfect chance to look for a new opportunity. Ask them if they like to perform a group action to discover something. Discover what? Do they command people to consort? Do they study? Do they hunt? All right. Target. When you present an opportunity, it should include components necessary for the players to understand how they might mount a score. It might not be ideal, but it should actually be an opportunity. Not a vague or indistinct note. Opportunity gives a target. Okay. A location. All right. A situation. All right. An obvious vector for a plan. How do you get there? Okay. Right. This is all good because this is, I mean, you know, I'm not, it's no surprise. This is a heist-based game, and these are the things that I generally talk about when I talk about heists, right? What's the mark? What's the place? What's going on at the place? Right? That all makes sense. But I will, yeah, and you know, the hard part is like when I think of a location, like I can't imagine running a location without a map, right? Because the map is a solid thing. And I have heard that some people do run Blades in the Dusk with a map. So that's going to be interesting. Applying connected factions, but like I don't even have ideas for locations at all, right? And I feel like I should have some. I feel like I should, you know, this is a great idea of like what are a list of like, you know, 20 interesting locations. And maybe they have it. Let's see in the Blades in the Dark sheet. We have character creation. This is the playbook, by the way. Playbook is available to everybody. You can go find this on the net and download it, and which is really cool, right? And these are all the playbooks for the characters. You know, we got items. We've got vice purveyors, all right. Crew creation, create a crew, choose a reputation, establish hunting ground, crew upgrades. So now we got assassins, bravos, cult, hawkers, shadows, and smugglers. Okay, cool. I don't know what this thing is about. I didn't read this part of like how do you build your thing here. You have your factions. That's cool. Duskvol, we have landmarks. That's fine. There's the city map. Shattered Island. Rules references. We have a GM reference here. Does this have Duskvol notables? So we do have like a list of locations here. It's pretty small, frankly. Then we got those weird things. Weird streets, buildings. So here's locations, right? Here's things that we can I can kind of roll on this. The idea that I'm rolling on this while we're playing is a little weird. People generator, that's cool. And then we got the neighborhoods, right? And that's the book. Oh, so I was looking at the principles. Okay, target, location, situation. I'm good with that. And I guess the idea is like typically I would do this sort of prep before the game, and now I'll be doing it during the game. And we'll see how that goes. You know, it might be fine. And I get to kind of collaborate with them. Like, oh, what do you think of this building is like? Or where do you think it's going? It just feels like locations in particular are things that I think are you know, need a little bit of prep. And we don't, you know, I don't feel like I'm ready without it. You know, I don't feel like I'm ready for it yet. Let's see. Connected factions and what they want. I think we're going to go with the 3 factions. See the crew chapter for table ranger crew type, bare bone starters that you can flesh out with details of your own. The other avenue for getting the game going. Let's see. You're offering the players the opportunity for action. Sure, it follows from the ongoing fiction of Duskvol as established in your game, but the heart of the opportunities is a gameplay mechanic. The players have showed up to play Blades in the Dark, which means they want to do exciting and interesting crimes. It's like they're at the arcade and they've dropped a quarter into the job to light up the screen and with a new stage and get the game going. You're providing enough to keep the game from stalling, enough so that Blades in the Dark can happen at the game table tonight. If the PCs are flush with available coin and rep to spend and downtime to burn, they can dig up all sorts of juicy information to position themselves strongly for this opportunity and go with it, a better engagement role at least. If they don't have the resources to spend, well, things are tougher. But that's the nature of the scoundrel's life. And at least there's still something fun to do. We can shrug the ill fortune of our characters. Another avenue for getting the game going is to follow the player's lead. This is just like providing an opportunity. But in this case, you listen to the opportunity presented by the players rather than blah, 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 blah. Okay. Cut to the action. I'm aware of that. Telegraph trouble before it strikes. Cool. Follow through. Most of this is like keep the DM screen down so they can see what's going on. Initiate action with the NPC, tell them consequences, take a clock, offer a devil's bargain, think off screen. Principles, be a fan of the placer, yep. Let everything flow from fiction, yep. Paint the world with a haunted brush, okay. Surround them with industrial sprawl, sure. Address the characters, address the players, consider the risk. Yep, hold on lightly, okay. Good with all those. Best practices, earn the trust of the group, okay, yep. Lead an interesting conversation, be curious, yes. Create an atmosphere of inquiry at the table. Yep. Play to find out what happens. Help the players use the game system. to pursue the goals of the characters. Don't let them flounder. Don't block. It's not your job to say you can't do that. Keep the meta channel open. Be a curious explorer of the game in play. Advocate for interests and capabilities of the NPCs. Yeah, play goal forward. Pull the group about what goal they're pursuing. Cut to the action. Yep. Beware of potential fiction versus established fiction. Potential fiction is everything in your head that you haven't put into play yet. It's a cloud of possible things. Zoom in and out. All right. Bring elements of the game to its life. Yep. Put it on a card. Yep. Oh, one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use Owlbear Rodeo for dice rolling. And also I'm going to have like a board, and basically we can all drop notes on the board while we play. I think that will work. I think that will work well. Bad habits. This is important. Don't call for a specific action roll. Yeah. The player, instead of the DM saying, or the GM saying, roll a perception check. You instead say, well, this is the thing that, here's the situation, here's what you're going to go. And the player says, well, I'm going to roll this roll, right? And you might say, and that's when you use the 2 gauges, which is, oh God, I know the answer to this. There's 2 levels. How difficult something is and how much of an impact it's going to have. And you don't want to have a highly difficult thing with a very low impact, right? Position and effect, thank you. Position, right? How much of an advantage, or how hard is this thing to do? How much trouble is it going to cause you if you fail at this, right? And effect is how big a deal is this going to be if you succeed, right? It's kind of it's like having 2 angles on a DC. Don't make the PCs look incompetent. Don't call for specific action rolls. Don't overcomplicate things, all right? Don't let planning get out of hand. Some players will want to plan an operation forever. Yeah, right? And we say, time to go. Don't hold back on what they earn. Don't say no. That's an interesting one. Don't roll twice for the same thing. Don't get caught up in the minutia. Yeah, so those are all good principles. For factions, I think we're going to go, I think we're right. We have 5 minutes left to actually prep this game. Create the characters and the crew, introduce the characters, the starting situation. After the characters and crew are introduced, throw the PCs in the starting situation, start the game in earnest. War on Crow's Foot situation, the following pages, follows this format as an example. So 2 factions directly at odds. Third faction is poised to benefit. Opening scene, establishes the location at one of the faction's headquarters. What is it like? What's the mood and disposition of the faction's gang? War on Crow's Foot. Rorik. And I'm going to go with this because they've got it here. And why wouldn't I? I paid for it. I might as well use what they've got. Rorik, the ward boss who ran criminal operations at Crow's Foot, has been killed. People say it was the second command, Lisa, who did it. She is now in control of Rorik's impressive gang of cutthroats who call themselves the Crows. Okay. With Rorik dead, the Lampbacks and the Red Sashes have once again exploded an open war on the streets with their old feud. So I think for our little notes here, we are going to have the Blades database. We'll have the Lampbacks. Give them a faction tag. We have the Red Sashes, and they're a faction. And we have the Crows, right? So I created some fun 3 faction pages that I can use. Cramped offices of Bazo Baz. Looking away, sounds like a Star Wars guy. So what's the score? Ah, here they are. The War Treasury. One of the faction leaders offers you a job. Steal the War Treasury of their rival. It's only 12 coin. You can keep 4 for your payment. Treasury located is a secret, but the faction leader can tell you where it is. Artifact. I like the artifact one. A strange artifact somewhere in the lair of their rival. It's kind of interesting that the entire starting situation is basically on one page. So the thing that I'm stuck on, the thing that I'm having a hard time with, because I can whip up NPCs pretty easily and I can do all that. And the thing that I get stuck with and the thing that's making me most nervous now is having locations, right? Interesting places that breathe life to this cool world and kind of show that off. And I think that needs more time than I can just whip up at a game, right? And an example, what I might do is I might go to, I have the Duskvol as a location, right? And I might say, 10 locations in Duskvol. And these are general locations. So like one would be like an electroplasm refinery, right? Derelict Leviathan Hunter. What else? A sanitarium, right? I think that'd be really cool. A abandoned prison would be really neat. Some of these ideas I'm stealing from games that I play, right? And I've just played Demon Souls, and Demon Souls has a great big prison place, right? And I really dug that. What about a floating? I don't know. Do they have like floating ships in here? I wonder, like floating noble villa, right? A floating noble's villa. How about a collapsed skyscraper? It's not really a skyscraper. A collapsed residential tower. What other locations? A failed lightning tower, right? A lightning tower that broke down. Landmarks are listed in neighborhoods. Yeah. So there's a lot of different places in various neighborhoods, and that can probably grab onto. I should probably grab onto a few of those. But there's something about kind of just thinking about them myself, and then I can sort of drop them in as we go. I don't know. It helps. I think it helps me get my brain in the right place. Ghost Hunter Training Ground. What about like an abandoned church, right? An abandoned cathedral. Right, unhallowed. I like that. That's freaky. Occult stuff is always kind of fun. What else? I get 2 more locations, and then I'll feel like I've got some thoughts. Other things that sort of really capture the nature of this game. Is there other nobles' villas? The Hive. The Hive is sort of like where the dregs of society can kind of find. Ooh, one thing that I always think is really cool is the Black Cistern. I think that would be cool. That's like a giant ancient cistern, 800-year-old cistern where waters from the Black Ocean are flowing in, and you can peer into you can peer into the star sign, and a lot of people have done it, and their brains cracked. So I don't know. I think this kind of stuff, this kind of exercise helps me. This kind of exercise just helps me get my head in the right place and maybe feel a little bit comfortable, even if I'm totally not ready. Just knowing that I can like think up some locations on the spot and doing it a little bit quicker when I'm doing my prep than during the game. And like, I'm not going to fill out tons of stuff, right? Like I don't have to have maps or fill out every single piece of this, but now I've got these like 10 cool places that might come up, right? Locations for me, there's a reason why locations are one of the 8 steps, and it's because they're harder to come up with than a lot of other things, in my opinion, like in my experience, right? It's harder to come up with really interesting, non-stereotypical locations that have fantastic elements than it is to be able to just come up with it on the fly. Well, I think that's it. Right? I think I got my session 0 notes. I think I've got my checklist of how I'm going to go about it with my players, and I think we're going to give it a try. I'm going to use that. I'm going to use the thing from the crows, right, and see how it goes. And I'm a little freaked out. I mean, not like but this is going to be weird, right? And worst case, like my players and I, we have a chat and we laugh and we have some good times. They go, I don't know. So I don't like the risk is low. The risk is low, and the potential is really high, right? So yeah, so that could be really good. So I want to thank everybody for coming today. Thank you for hanging out with me while I prepare for my game. If you liked this show, you can help me out by subscribing to the Sly Flourish newsletter, supporting me directly on Patreon, picking up any of my books, or subscribing to my videos on YouTube. Thank you all very much. Have a great day. See you guys next week, and get out there and play an RPG.